Hello there. This is Rachel Burns. I am a certified financial planner, certified divorce financial analyst, and my firm Financial Planning. I help newly single women get their finances back on track.
Hey,
Hello.
how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Me too. I was just about to introduce us and introduce our topic. My eye is twitching like crazy, so I'm not just like winking at you or having a seizure or something. Um, but yeah, so I'm Rachel Burns. I'm joined by Asa Pitt. He is a mediator and attorney based in Los Angeles. And today we're going to talk about what you need to know about mediation before filing for divorce. So before we get into that, you want to just introduce yourself a little bit better than
Yeah,
I
sure.
have?
Sure. My name's Asa Pitt. Like she said, I'm a divorce mediator and an attorney located in Los Angeles. I've been flying solo for a little over a year and a half now, but handling tons of cases. I think I have 15 or 16 live right now. First year and a half has been great. Prior to that, I went to law school at Chapman. I worked around in a few different places, between then to now, a lot of stuff in the entertainment industry. And during the course of the pandemic, everything had shut down in the industry. My parents had gone through a divorce when I was a kid, and so I was always interested in the subject because my parents handled their divorce through mediation. And when looking at kind of the lifestyle and co-parenting relationship that my parents had versus those of my parents going through a similar thing, the situation my brother and I had and that my parents had was clearly better than the other people. So I was always kind of interested in the subject, and COVID was a great time to kind of diversify my skill set and get into it. So I started learning, started taking different, certification courses, then started volunteering in small claims court in Orange County. They were one of the only courts that were open. Then I was also volunteering in the family court there, handling divorce mediations. Felt competent pretty quickly, and just decided to go off my own, start doing it, and it's been great. I think my success rate is over 94% right now. It doesn't work out every single time, but for the most part, it's pretty solid.
That's awesome. Well, the reason that I wanted to talk to you today is mediation. I think there's some misconceptions about the divorce process, and I think when people first think of divorce, they think, oh, I have to get an attorney and I have to go to court. They think of like people getting divorced on TV and people like yelling at each other in court. And I think that there's not a ton of awareness of like the alternative methods to getting divorced. And so I really just want people to understand the options that are available and why certain options might work well for them, why they might not, because like there's a lot better
Mm-hmm.
options out there for people than like spending a whole boatload of money and
Mm-hmm.
fighting it out in court. Because like you, I come from divorced parents, and my parents were shockingly like not dramatic, and I don't even know if they did mediation, but like I just think about how good of an outcome is potential if you don't if you go at it with a different kind of mindset. So that's why I was really excited to talk to you today about mediation, and maybe we can kind of clear up some misconceptions and just give people some
Mm-hmm.
more about the process.
Yeah, definitely. I think that sounds like a good plan. I think, so many people have preconceived notions about what a divorce looks like just from what they see on the news, on television, and in movies. But the reality is that it always doesn't have to be a big, nasty thing like it's made out to be.
Yeah.
I think traditionally, most people are aware of divorce litigation. Everybody's heard of that, where, excuse me, each spouse, hires an attorney to represent them and advocate on their behalf to get them, the most amount of time with their kids, most amount of assets, least amount of debts, or, receive the most amount of support or pay the least amount of support possible. And on paper, you're thinking, oh, that sounds really good. That sounds like a good plan. I want somebody to fight for me, until you realize that, the attorneys are being paid on an hourly rate, and the longer the attorneys fight, the more they get paid. Not every time does it go all the way to a trial. A lot of times attorneys do settle it amongst themselves, but it's after, some extra steps that you wouldn't have to take in mediation, or at least I think steps that you can take in mediation that would be expedited, right? Am I making sense so far?
Yeah.
So I think the biggest difference is, between litigation and mediation are that in mediation, you're controlling the outcome, not your attorney or not a judge. And mediation is more cost efficient and time efficient. So, I kind of talked a little bit about what litigation is, but I want to say what mediation is and kind of how that works. So what mediation is rather than having those attorneys fight for you and advocate on your behalf, you're just advocating for yourself, and you're meeting with a neutral third-party mediator. That's me, who's just going to help the two of you go through the conversation and negotiate what your divorce settlement is going to look like. How are we going to split up these assets and debts? What is the parenting plan going to look like? What is child support and spousal support going to look like, if that's even an issue? My focus is mostly on organizing the negotiation in a way that we make sure that we hit everything that needs to be hit. I think a lot of times when people try to handle a divorce on their own without the help of a lawyer or mediator, sometimes they can figure it out, but they miss key ingredients that are supposed to go into the settlement agreement. And then it can open up a can of worms down the road because they didn't hit everything that needs to be hit. So my first focus is on organizing what needs to be hit. And then second is really just about facilitating communication and making sure helping people express their point of view and understanding the other spouse's point of view. I think a lot of time people are me, but they have a hard time listening, especially in an emotionally heated conversation. No matter what people say, divorce is always going to have a significant emotional component. So another part of what I'm doing is trying to take that emotional component out of it, and just stick to the facts and stick to how are we going to divvy this stuff up. Obviously I don't really tolerate people yelling at each other, screaming, cussing. That's the sort of stuff that just isn't going to get us anywhere. We're talking about things that aren't really relevant. The example I use all the time is, the fight that you had at a Christmas party 2 years ago has nothing to do with splitting up these assets and debts. It's completely irrelevant. Let's stay focused on this topic. Or like in a recent mediation I had, one of the spouses kind of went into a speech about how he wasn't trying to hide certain stock options and assets of that kind of nature. And, she went on a kind of a tirade about how he was lying. And my point was, hey, I'm sure you have what I said to both of them, I said, hey, listen, I'm sure you have your reasons to believe that he was lying, and you're absolutely entitled to believe that. And I don't know if he was lying or he wasn't lying. And I don't know if you were lying. The only person that's going to know is you. But what we have right here in front of us is we have the statements for what these stocks look like, and we know what's at stake. So instead of talking about was somebody lying or not, let's just get down to brass tacks and figure out how we're going to split this stuff up. If you guys want to figure out later if somebody was lying or not, and that's important to you personally and on an emotional level, that's cool, and I get it. But in this conversation, that's not what we're talking about. I know that was a lot, but does that kind of make sense, kind of the key things that I'm doing?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think going back to what you said earlier about you are a neutral third party, I think that's really good for people to understand, because the mediator's job is not to advocate for you. And some people think that that's going to happen. Like, oh, I'm going to go into this process and the mediator is going to tell me this is what you need to do because this is what's best for you. That's not what's going to happen. They are truly a neutral third party who is helping you and your spouse work through these things kind of on your own. And that might not work for everyone. That's something that's really good to know. Like, you might be in a situation with your spouse where that's not going to be possible. And maybe you do need someone advocating for you. And maybe you're not really eligible for mediation at that point. But for people who that sounds reasonable for, and you feel like you guys can come to an agreement and you just kind of need some help facilitating that conversation, then that's like the perfect situation for mediation. And you also mentioned mediation can save a lot of money. And when you're looking at the divorce, I mean, I'm a financial planner. I'm obsessed with saving money on things, but like you think about, okay, we're saving money by not fighting these things out in court. It's good to understand that there are short-term costs and there are long-term costs, and making short-term moves to save money can result in maybe a mistake being made that can cost more in the long run. So it's not like this is the perfect solution, this is how you should save money,
Mm-hmm.
but like if used properly, if used in the right situation, then it can totally save money, because you don't need, if you can work it out on your own through this mediator, then you don't need to go to court. You don't need to rack up these
Right.
attorney hours. So it's good to have like a long-term perspective on the money thing, because saving money is important, but you have to like be thinking about the long term as well.
Yeah, and there are other people that we can bring into the mediations if certain things are unclear. Because kind of like you said, I am neutral. You know, the outcome, I'm really not so focused on what the outcome is, as long as there's an outcome and the parties can agree to an outcome. The kind of public policy behind mediation, thinking behind it, is that if the spouses can come up with an agreement on their own, not one that I came up with for them, but they came up with it on their own, and they believe it's fair, then it's fair. And you don't need a judge or a lawyer to tell you that it's unfair, you know? So that's
Yeah.
kind of my focus. But if somebody is unsure, maybe they think that there are hidden assets and debts, or they want to have a better understanding of the long-term, you know, financial implications of their divorce, then they can bring in, you know, somebody like you know, a certified divorce financial planner. You know, there are special tax people that focus in divorce. There are forensic accountants that specialize in uncovering hidden assets and debts. So I always tell people it's not limited to just us three here. You know,
Yeah.
you can have an attorney that you want to consult with on the side, or you can even bring an attorney into the meeting, as long as the other party is okay with it. Because what mediation is totally voluntary. You know, so you know, nobody's being forced to mediate. And nobody's forcing them to stay there, so they can leave at any time if they want to. I think just most parties understand, at least who are pursuing mediation, that you know, it's a drop in the bucket compared to you know, litigated divorce. So why not just take our chances here on this low cost, high reward thing? You know, worst case, it doesn't work out, we're right back where we were, and we've only spent, you know, a little bit of money.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
I'm a big fan of the team approach. Like when even if you're looking at mediation and you think, okay, this might be right for me, it's not like, okay, we hire a mediator and that's it. Like you can still bring in extra help from other
mm-hmm,
professionals. If you need
mm-hmm,
someone to help you with the financial part, you can bring in a certified divorce financial analyst. You can bring in a forensic accountant if you need help
mm-hmm.
valuing certain hard to value assets, or if you think that might be some hidden stuff out there. Or you can bring in an attorney who can, you know, be like a consulting attorney
Mm-hmm.
and can kind of give you their blessing on whatever you guys come up with. So it's not, the mediator isn't like the end all be all, but it can be, you know, that person can be just a part of your divorce team.
And I just tell people who are going through mediation that if you also want to work with an attorney, make sure you work with an attorney who understands mediation, and has worked a lot with mediation before. You don't want an attorney who's going to come in and blow up the whole thing, unless your agreement is just completely lopsided, which I think is rarely the case, because if you think it's fair, then it's probably not lopsided. Because people, I think, if anything, are extra vigilant in mediation because there isn't somebody watching over them and it's just them. But make sure you have an attorney who understands that you want to do this amicably, you want to reach a healthy agreement, and you don't want to fight longer than you need to fight. I think my biggest pet peeve is, you know, I have clients, you know, we reach an agreement, great. Then they bring in an attorney at the end to look over the agreement, who's just supposed to make sure it's written in a way that they're going to receive what they agreed to. And
Yeah.
then, you know, the attorney starts whispering all sorts of things in their ear. You know, I could have gotten you this, you could have done that. And then it kind of just, it blows up the whole thing. And all that
Yeah.
work was, I'm not going to say for nothing, because we can just pick it up and finish it. But it definitely can add a few extra steps. So see if your mediator has any attorneys that they recommend and have worked with before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. a good point. So what is the process look like from beginning to end when you work with an attorney? Or not an attorney, a
You
mediator?
mean a mediator? Yeah, yeah, no
Yeah.
worries. So with me, this is what it looks like. I usually do a consultation with one or both parties. If one party calls me and wants to have a short consultation, I'll do the same with the other party because I'm neutral, right? So if I do it with one, I'll do it with the other. Then depending on them, sometimes I'll bring them into a three-way consultation just to make sure we all have a good understanding of what the professional expectations are on my end and what I expect of them. I send out a mediation services agreement. They'll sign it, and they'll pay their retainer or fee up front, whatever it is that we agreed to. Then from there, I start collecting information. What I like to do first, because I'm also an attorney, I'm going to take care of all of their paperwork for them and do all the document preparation. I like to get enough basic information to start the petition right away. And what the petition is basically tells the court or the state, the government, that I want a divorce from this person. So I fill that out. It's easy for me to do. I file it with a court. We take that, serve it on the other party. It's important that we do that as soon as possible, because the soonest that the two of you can be possibly divorced is 6 months from the date that the respondent is served. So even while I'm collecting that information, we want to get the petition done ASAP to kind of start that clock. The next piece of paperwork is the response, which is just saying, hey, I'm aware that I'm being divorced. It's really important that you do that, by the way. Don't ever let your response lapse and kind of default on your divorce. It's not a good thing. Don't do that. Anyway, well, that's all going on. I'm just collecting information. So I want to know, like I said, I need to organize the divorce and we need to talk about everything that needs to be talked about. So I'm collecting things like bank statements, credit card statements, car loans, anything under the sun that you can think of, like W-2s. Because I just want to know the whole picture. I want to know I want to know your income. I want to know your expenses. That's also important. Aside from just knowing what we're talking about, the court requires you to exchange information. Just call it, we'll call it disclosure forms, which I also take care of. So you don't actually file with the court your assets and debts, but you file paperwork with the court that says we exchanged our financial disclosures with each other. But that stuff is really important to be filled out properly and exchanged and done, because in mediation, we're on the honor system here, that people aren't hiding anything. And it's kind of the same deal with lawyers, because if you hide an asset or debt and then you reach a divorce settlement, it gets filed in the court, and then it comes out later that somebody was hiding something pretty significant, the entire thing can be blown up and you start back from square one, and the party who was lying might end up paying attorney fee. It's a mess. So you really don't want to lie. So I collect that information, we exchange it with each other, let the parties look over it, and then I'll say, send me a few ideas, send me some proposals, what are you thinking of? I'll talk to each of them one-on-one just to get a better understanding of where they're coming from, learn some additional information. And then, from there, we can just hop right into our mediation sessions and see if we can get through it. I usually break them up. I don't like my sessions to go longer than 2 hours, because it just seems like that's kind of the threshold that people have before they kind of lose it. And which, by the way, is totally understandable. Like I said, it's an emotional thing. It's totally normal in a mediation. If we gotta take 5 or 15 minutes just so people can kind of calm down their nerves or think, or sometimes I want to talk to them one-on-one. But I would say for the most part, we usually get it done in, I would say, 1 to 5 sessions. I mean, I've had plenty of times where people just come in and literally 30 minutes, they already know what they want and it's done. We hit everything that needs to be hit. They were organized, like, that's it. That's it. Simple. But if it takes a few sessions, it takes a few sessions. At the end of each sessions, I write a memo of understanding, which isn't anything binding, but it's just kind of something that says, hey, like, this is what we talked about in this past session. These are the things we verbally agreed to, and it kind of serves as a checkpoint of where we left off, and then what needs to happen between this past meeting and the next one. Do we need to collect more information? Do I want to hear some more proposals? Do you want to check on something? Whatever it is you need to do, that's all covered in the memo. Eventually it's done, right? We wrap it up. I'll write another memo just saying, hey, this is the final thing. I'm going to put this all into the big stipulated agreement that we'll file with the court. I get the thumbs up on that. I draft a stipulated agreement, which is just a fancy way of saying the settlement agreement. I get the parties to sign it along with all of the judgment package, that final court paperwork that goes in with the settlement agreement. I submit that. The court usually takes somewhere between 2 to 4 months to read it, stamp it off, and send it back, and that's it. So what I tell people is if they are on point and act right and don't take 3 months to send me your bank statement, which is silly, and stuff like that happens. So if you're going to be that kind of person and you want to drag your feet through this whole thing, then maybe mediation isn't right for you. You're going to waste some serious time if one or both of you do things like that. But if you just want to get down to it and you're on it and you do the things I'm asking you to do, you should be done with me in less than 2 months easily. And then the rest of it is just waiting for the court to stamp it off, So that's, I guess, that other 4 months in between. I feel like I wanted to say something about, the people that are right for mediation and kind of just sending me things on time. I guess let me just say this. It breaks my heart when I see people, they want to jump into mediation. They say they want to do the right thing. And then, 5 months have gone by and you haven't sent me your bank statements. That's silly. It takes 5 minutes to go into your bank, download it, and send me your bank statements. You know what I mean? Yeah. So don't be those people. If you're just in it to hurt somebody, or you're trying to just take somebody for a ride, or, do something like that, mediation's not right for you. Get a lawyer. If you're in a situation where, you don't feel safe speaking out for what you believe is fair, get a lawyer. If you're in a situation where there's significant, spousal abuse, and that person knows where you live, or there's still a lot of communication, get a lawyer. But for a lot of people, right, the people that come to me, I'd say the ideal people are the ones who want to do it amicably. They want to do it quickly. They're not out to kill each other. They understand that, hey, we tried this thing. We were in love. It didn't work out for one reason or another. It is what it is. Let's kind of cut our losses and move forward with our lives as easily and smoothly as possible. And especially for parents, I tell parents, like, if you can put your put your kids at the center of your mediation, not in the middle, right? Don't put them in the middle and make it a whole issue. If you can put them in the center of it and try to do what's right, for your kids, then you're right for mediation. But if you want, 100% custody of your kid and you have no interest in letting the other parent see your kids, then get a lawyer. You know what I mean? I think that gives a pretty good idea of who's right for mediation and who's not. And I know I said a lot of how the process works and kind of elaborate on a few different things, but I think that sums it up.
Yeah, I think that's really good to understand, because some people might want to do mediation because they like the concept. It makes sense. They want to save money. They want to keep it as drama-free as possible, but sometimes it's just not a good option, depending on your relationship with that person. Even if it's not a domestic violence situation, but even if you're just like not comfortable talking with your ex present, or if you feel intimidated or whatever, then you're not a good candidate for mediation. Like, even if you want to, it just might not be the best for you, because if you're not going to be able to advocate for yourself comfortably, then you need to have someone for you, and you need to bring in that attorney. So that's really good to understand. And then going back to the financial disclosures, because this is something that I see a lot of issues with. If you've ever looked at the financial disclosure forms, and by the way, Asa and I are both in California, but it looks really overwhelming, especially if you are not the spouse who has been in charge of the day-to-day management of the finances. Look at this list of all these things that it's asking for, and you're just like, I don't even know what half of these things are. I run into a lot of clients who need help filling that out, because it is extremely overwhelming and it's intimidating. And there's a lot of pressure, because it's like, okay, I need to disclose all of this information because I don't want to get in trouble for leaving something off, whether that's intentional or not. And you need it to reflect reality. And so if you are trying to fill out this form and you're not sure about your assets, or you're not sure about your financial situation, that's a good point to bring in some help with someone like a certified divorce financial analyst, because they can help you kind of gather all that information about your assets, because some assets are hard to value, and some, like I live by the Capitol, and so I have a lot of clients who are state workers, and there's so much confusion about what those retirement assets are worth, so that when
Mm-hmm.
you are filling out these disclosures and you're trying to estimate kind of what these retirement assets are worth, I'm working with a client where there was like over $1 million missing because they weren't factoring in the actual value of this
Mm-hmm.
retirement plan. And that's not even people trying to pull a fast one on the other one. That's just like,
Right. Some people just don't. Some people just don't know, or
yeah,
if I
and
feel
that's not,
confused, then I call. I could sometimes sometimes it's a lot for me too, and then I call somebody, and I got to pause and figure it out. But I don't think
yeah,
I don't think there's any mediator, attorney, CDFA, anybody out there who knows every single thing that there is to know. I think people are constantly learning, but you want to work with somebody who understands that when they're a little unsure about something, they'll stop, pause, and take the time to figure it
yeah,
out and make sure they get it
absolutely.
right for you. You know,
Yeah,
like don't be
yeah,
surprised if your lawyer or your CFA or media is like, I don't know about that. Let me check. That's a good thing. That's a good
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what can I'm trying not to speak in double negatives. What can a mediator not do? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the mediator is not going to advocate for you. The mediator is not going to help you. Mediator is not going to help you make a stronger argument. The mediator might help you understand some of the strengths and weaknesses of your argument or the other person's, but they're not going to help you, they're not going to help you form a better argument. Their mediator is definitely not going to help you hide things. I'm trying to think what else. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest thing. The mediator is not going to advocate for you. The mediator will help you talk through it, but they're certainly not going to be there to advocate for you like an attorney would be. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can think of. They're not going to give you too much, legal advice. They can kind of educate you about maybe how something would play out in court. I mean, the family court is notoriously unpredictable. You hear people talk about all the time similar divorce fact patterns in the morning versus the afternoon with the same judge, totally different results. So that's the thing about family courts. It's super unpredictable. And one of the
Yeah,
advantages of mediation is that, you're in control of your own destiny and nobody's making you agree to something that you don't want to agree to. At the end of the day, it's totally up to you. So yeah, nobody's going to make you do anything either. The mediator is not going to make the other party do anything. They're not going to make you do anything. Like there's nothing I can do to make the other party move faster. That's not a good faith thing. I can check in, I can ask people to do things, but at the end of the day, it's really on you. And I'm not going to check in with somebody every 3 days. Hey, send me your bank statement. Hey, send me your bank statement. That's silly. So what you need to do. I've asked you. I might check in every 10 days or so for something like that if I have to. But the ideal client and the right person for mediation just kind of rips off the Band-Aid and pushes through.
yeah, yeah. Someone who's self-directed would probably be a good candidate
Right,
for the
right.
process. And then going back to the legal advice part, I think that's good to talk about too. So a mediator is not there to give you legal advice, really. They're there to educate you on the process, but the legal advice is really something that's specific to an attorney. And ASA is an attorney, so
Mm-hmm.
it's good to understand that there are mediators out there who have different specialties. I know mediators who are attorneys like ASA. I know mediators who are therapists. I know mediators who are financial experts. So depending on what type of mediator you go to, they're going to have that additional area of expertise. So I think that's something that's really good to understand, because if you're going to a mediator who's a therapist and you're like, okay, I want legal advice, and that's not what you're going to get out of that
Yeah,
relationship. So that's,
like I can tell people some basic community property principles or some basic spousal support principles or child support principles, but the law can be interpreted different ways, and that's what lawyers make an entire career doing. Like they're arguing about the law and how is it favorable or not favorable to their client, And the people I'm talking to really don't understand the law. So I find a lot of times it's frivolous when I even get into that. So a lot of times I just try to start from a point of fairness. Like, let's not even talk about the law. Let's just talk about, what are your income? What's your expenses? What did you do? What did they do? Can we just come up with something without looking at all that other stuff? And if we can, great. And if you want to, have some kind of understanding about community property or support rules, I'll tell you. But I don't know. I don't know how that stuff is going to play out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we covered a lot of ground here. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think would be good for people to know?
I want to revisit something you said about, when people are uncomfortable speaking to each other, maybe mediation isn't right for them. I would say give it a shot in the consultation, just see how the communication is working there. And you might be surprised how much easier the communication is when you have a third party who's neutral to both of you. A lot of people have a hard time speaking one-on-one, but when there's another party there, something just kind of clicks for them, or when there's somebody kind of like refereeing, making sure we're not just screaming and yelling at each other, making sure that we're not repeating the same thing, over and over, and we're actually moving along. It can be pretty beneficial. So I'd say feel it out in the consultation. And then maybe in the mediation, it would be, it would go a little smoother than you might expect. And I think people surprise themselves all the time. And, like I said, worst case, it doesn't work out. You spent a few $1,000s, which is, nothing compared to the average cost of an attorney in the state, which I think is, off the top of my head, I want to say about 17,500. That's like a minimum average if you don't have kids. And if you do have kids, it's upwards in like mid 20,000. And for a lot of people, it's a lot. It's much, 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 much more. So that's it. I mean, I think those are even generous best case averages, if you want to call it that. Like with me, I'm pretty transparent about it. My fees are all on my website. There's like flat fees for preparing your paperwork and drafting the stipulation, total $3,000. Everything else is $300 an hour, which is totally contingent on how much time do you want to waste, arguing with each other, or asking me questions, or dragging your feet, or how many times you can make me follow up with you. It's really up to you at that point how much you spend. So worst case, we've taken care of your petition, your response, and your disclosures. Maybe we figured out a few things, but not everything, and you can figure out the rest with an attorney. But at least you've saved like a ton of time and aggravation, and you've stayed in control, throughout the whole, at least up to that point. But like at the beginning, like I said, my success rates are pretty high.
Yeah. And I did want to clarify when I said if you're uncomfortable speaking in front of your ex, not like, I mean, I would say most people probably don't want to sit there next to their ex and like talk. That's probably not really super comfortable for anyone. But what I'm referring to is like, if you feel like if you say something, there's going to be repercussions, or if you feel
for sure,
like that type of discomfort.
For sure.
There's going to be a minimum level of discomfort for everyone. So
it's not I don't think anybody goes into mediation or leaves just been like, that was fun and easy. I think some people, I think they usually leave shrugging their shoulders, okay, it was a little turbulent at times. I made some concessions. They made some concessions. Wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. And that's usually the takeaway. But you're right. I mean, if you're completely scared of the person that you're sitting next to, maybe it's not right for you. But I think, Zoom and COVID has actually been great for that, because I've handled most of my mediations via Zoom, which is great for convenience sake. It makes scheduling way easier. It makes, sharing documents and showing people statements, things like that, way easier. And I think people also just feel a little more comfortable kind of speaking in the comfort of their own home or wherever than they are right next to the other person. I think the downside of that is sometimes people feel too comfortable and they can get a little riled up, but I'm always there to just keep it in check. So that's not cool. That's not what we're doing. Let's bring it back down to earth and talk through this like we said we were going to. So feel it out in the consultation and see.
Yeah. So we got a question from Molly. So she asked if we have a website and social media, and what's the best way to move forward. So do you want to share yours?
Yeah, those are good questions, and you should share yours too. My website is asapittmediation.com. I think it's in the bio of my Instagram account, but it's ASAPITT mediation.com. And then everything else is there. You can see, the cost, what is mediation, how does it work, what's the process, and you can just fill out a little contact submission form right there, and I'll call you back as soon as possible, and we'll see what we can do. And what about yours?
Sure. So my website is trueworthfp.com. So trueworth, F as in Frank, P as in Paul.com. That's a good place to get more information about my services. Thank you, Molly. Thanks for spelling that out for us. And then also there's buttons everywhere where you can book a free strategy session with me. And just to clarify, so ASA is a mediator. I'm a certified divorce financial analyst and certified financial planner. So I can offer the financial analysis that supports you during the divorce process. I can also do long-term planning. So those are like kind of two separate parts of my business. But you can learn more about that on the website. And then also on social media, obviously we're on Instagram. Both of us are on Instagram. So this is a really great place to keep in touch, probably with both of us. I'm on Instagram a lot. So that's a good place to connect. I'm on LinkedIn too. But I would say website and Instagram are some good ways to keep in touch. And yeah, I would feel free to schedule a consultation with either of us. Asa and I are both super happy to chat with people and to help in any way that we can.
Yeah, even if it's telling you that we're not the right people and we got to point you somewhere else, I do that all the time. So we're, whatever it is, we'll help you figure out what the right thing is for you.
Absolutely.
But no, thanks so much for having me on. I thought it was a good conversation. Hopefully it educated some people, if not for themselves, maybe for a friend or family member down the road. Because the harsh thing, it's like, I don't want to see people getting divorced, but the harsh reality is that a lot of people get divorced. So, and there's not really a way around it. In this state, if somebody wants a divorce from you, they're getting a divorce from you. It's just a matter of, do you want to do it the hard way, or do you want to try the easier way first? And if the easier way doesn't work, then you can try the hard way. That's kind of, I think, where me and you come in. Is like, let's try to do this the easy way.
Yeah, and we just want to we want to offer as many resources as we can. We want to offer as much support as we can, because it's a difficult process for anyone. And we just want to give you the support that you need so that you can get through it as unscathed as possible.
Yeah. Like I said, kind of shrug your shoulders at the end. It wasn't perfect, but it was not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Like going to the dentist.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like going to the dentist. It is like going to the dentist. Yeah.
Well, I really like going to the dentist, so that might be a little different. But for most people,
I had an easy one. I knew it was too good to be true last week. He did a couple things. I was like, that was too easy. It still hurts. I'm going back Friday. But we're not those kind of dentists. We get it done. We get it done the first time.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Asa, thank you so much for coming on. I think this was great information, and I've learned a lot from talking to you, and I hope everyone else has learned some good information too. And again, reach out to either of us. We're happy to help. So thanks everyone for tuning in, or for anyone who watches the recording. Just let us know how we can help.
Yeah, please. Thanks.
All right.
Okay. Talk soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.